Thank you for tuning into the OurView Podcast, where we aim to change the tone of conversation, raise awareness, and educate on topics related to living with a disability. We have a great show lined up for you today. On today's episode, our guest, my friend, is Jill Moore. Jill is originally from North Carolina and is a graduate of the University of Illinois, where she majored in industrial design. Jill is an inclusive play and marketing specialist for landscape structures. She is a Team USA Paralympic athlete, and like me, she was born with spina bifida. Join us as we discuss our experiences of living with spina bifida, the COVID-19 pandemic, and our feelings about being identified by certain labels.
Okay.
So, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I did prepare a brief audio introduction of who you are. So my guest will hear that first. But just to introduce yourself, just tell us who you are.
Yeah, great questions. Great questions. So I'm Jill, Jill Moore, I suppose, if you need to get fancy.
Yes.
But I grew up in North Carolina. I went to school at University of Illinois, where I participated in wheelchair racing and learned a ton from my time with Team USA. And then moved to Minneapolis to work for landscape structures in the world of playgrounds. So get to do a lot of talking about people with disabilities in the world of play. Did I do it? Did I nail that?
Yes, you did.
I need constant validation.
You'll always get it from me, no problem.
Thanks.
So Jill and I, as she mentioned, she works for landscape structures, and Jill and I met actually in Atlantic City for the first time, I believe, back in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2018, Jill was there with landscape structures for the League of Municipalities conference. I think it's a conference.
Mm-hmm.
So Jill and I met through our mutual friend, Michael Wiley. And then that was in November of 2018. And then Jill and some of her colleagues were back in New Jersey in June of 2019 for a conference here again in New Jersey. And, we were able to connect there because of the job that I have working with Build Jake's Place, where we build inclusive playgrounds. So I think the best trip I had in a very long time was when I came to Minnesota in August of last
Oh my gosh,
year.
that was
And
so much fun.
it was so much fun, and getting 3 wheelchair users on a boat, and
We did do that. We did do that.
succeeded.
I didn't think we would do that, but we did that.
Yeah, we succeeded. And I just remember Michael telling me, please do not fall in this lake. I am not prepared to go back and tell your mom.
Sure.
I'm not prepared to tell your mom that.
Art.
Yeah. So I did not fall in the lake, and we had a great time for those 3 days I was there. I think touring different playgrounds and getting just learning more about landscape structures and what you all do. And it was a great time, and I'm definitely looking forward to coming back there.
Yeah, when the world's less crazy, and probably not in January.
Yes, not in the winter.
That was your big stipulation, was you were not coming in January.
That's right, and I came in August, so the end
you
of
were
July
smart man
and August.
about that.
Yes. So today, Jill and I are going to play a fun game of bingo. This will be fun. I found this great bingo card. And
it's bingo night.
It's bingo night. So the one thing that Jill and I do have in common is that we were both born with spina bifida. So this fun game of bingo is going to actually be a wheelchair users bingo with some common phrases that we may or may not have been told or come across in our lives. And just for each one, I would just like for us to share, if we've had that, this phrase said to us, and, if we can come up with a funny memory of when it was told to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to kind of jump in while you pull that up and kind of talk about the origin of this bingo card and our conversation of where this started. And Art and I are both wheelchair users, and so we see a lot of ridiculous craziness in the world and a lot of crazy conversations that we're privy to, that things people say. And I firm believe that we are in a position to approach that with a smile, even when you want to strangle them. And so
Yes.
this was rooted, and maybe I'm stealing a later conversation, but this was rooted in what are some typical things that we see, and how do we adjust?
There
Can
it
you see?
is. I can.
Ooh, I did it. I'm gonna make us bigger. No, I'm not. Okay.
So let's get this game of bingo started.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this for some
Oh
reason.
my God, me too.
So the first one says, sorry, our building is not accessible. This has definitely happened to me.
I think this has happened to me, but I don't think anyone's ever been like outright enough to admit it. They're always just like, well, yeah, we're a little bit outdated. We got grandfathered in. Like, you weirdly get the history of the whole building, the whole street, the whole town, all of the reasons why they didn't have to make their building accessible. Or if they put a side door that's accessible that's locked 99% of the time, or if you need to go through the basement. I've walked through a lot of kitchens to get to where I
Yes.
need to go.
Yes, me too. Me too. I'll never forget. I had a friend who owned a restaurant, and I can walk short distances. I wear braces and use crutches. So I would go to his restaurant and just, I would walk in. But then one day I just asked him, you redid this whole place. Did you ever think about making one of your two front doors an accessible entrance with a ramp?
Yeah.
And he just said, no, well, we have a ramp. And I said, where? and then I
Right. Like,
and then
when did that get there?
right. And then I said, well, I've never seen it. I said, and if you fix your lips to say it's in your kitchen, I said, we're going to have a problem. And he said, okay, well,
Yes.
I just won't say it's in the kitchen. I said, but that's where it is. I said, no, I don't want to enter through your kitchen, or if, God forbid there's a fire in your kitchen and that's the way I have to exit.
Yeah. And it's always, you feel super strange because all of a sudden it's you and your crew, because they don't
Right.
ditch you. It's you and your homies rolling in, and you're like waving to the chefs. Like,
Right.
oh, what's she cooking there? That looks great. But you want to just kind of skedaddle through there and like not make a scene or be a problem.
Right.
But I was at same situation where I was at an event, and I needed to enter and exit the restaurant pretty frequently.
Uh-huh.
And so the staff, gosh, it had to be a new person every time looking at me like, why are you here? And it's like, I don't know either.
Right. Yeah. I don't understand why people wouldn't want to fix that part of
Yeah.
their building to make it more accessible. And the restaurant I referred to was on a main roadway that comes back from the Jersey Shore. So I was just thinking of people that can't
Right.
get out
That's
of
like
their
a
wheelchairs.
tourist thing.
Yeah, people that can't get out of their wheelchairs, they would just keep going past his restaurant to a place they know they could enter,
Yeah, that they could
with ease.
get in that's friendlier. Okay, so the can you have sex one is my least favorite question I ever get. Because they ask that an unbelievable amount of times. Like, college was so bizarre because everyone thought they were entitled to that information.
Yeah, to know if
Which
you could
is
have
super
sex. Yeah.
strange. Like, you're cruising through a bar, you're gonna go grab a drink, and all of a sudden someone stops you and is like, hey, so I've got a question. And you're like, don't do it. I know where this is going. Please don't do it. And then they say, can you have sex? And you're like, why would you think that's an okay thing to ask a human
Right.
being?
Right. Any human being, right.
Like, why do you want to know? Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
you're not even attractive. Don't ask me these questions. But no, in all seriousness, I think it lends itself. I know I can definitely cross that one off my bingo card.
Yes, me too.
But in all, it lends itself to such a strange and bigger conversation about, I think people feel very entitled to information about our bodies and our story. And I personally I have just about no shame. And I love being vocal about my story and what I was born with, and advocating and educating. But I know some people are more private about it. And obviously I'm more private about if I can have sex or not, because that's outrageous. But I think people feel that because we are different, that we are in wheelchairs, there is this entitlement to, well, why? What's your story? And
Yeah.
it's okay to be curious. And I think people should learn that there's a difference between being curious and prefacing it with, okay, this is something different that I want to know more about, than acting like we owe them an answer for being what we are and moving how we do.
That's so well said. Oh my goodness.
Thanks.
So well said. It's, just if you're trying to, become more educated about something, I think that's one thing. But if you're just, stretching to try to find a conversation starter, like that's not it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can come up and say, hey, I've got a lot of questions about disability. And like, hell, I will invite you to go grab a cup of coffee right then and there in the middle of an airport, and we can sit down and talk about it. But
Right.
when people out of left field, like I'll have people sit down next to me on airplanes and say, so what's wrong with you? Like, I saw you got on the plane out of a wheelchair. Why? And it's like, well, I had my headphones in. That's the universal sign for don't ask that question.
Right.
But here we go.
Yeah, the universal sign for I don't want to talk right now. So.
Right.
Oh, I think so many of these on this bingo card are very personal. The next one is I'm praying for you. I definitely get that a lot.
Yup.
I definitely get that a lot. This one, I don't mind this as much. My family, were very religious. We, go to church often. But it's the I'm praying for you that you will be healed. And I'm kind of just like, no, like, thanks,
Right.
but this is
Why do
kind of
you
me.
think that's what I want?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the other thing. Like, no, I'm pretty okay with it now. Like I've been living with this for quite some time, and I found
Same
my ways
thing.
to get around,
Yeah.
and like
I
I'm
think
okay.
that,
Thanks for the prayers, but
right, exactly. And I think my underlying fault with that one, again, is not that someone's wishing you well, it's that assuming they wish something was different for you. Like they assume you are unfulfilled, you're not content, you're not happy with what you are. And so I pray that you're going to get better. But why do you
yes.
think I'm sick? Why do you think I'm poorly off? And oh my gosh, they do it in the weirdest spots too. Like if somebody,
Yes.
think about all the time someone stopped you and said, okay, can I say a prayer for you? And I'm like, I'm in the middle of Panera right now. My
Right.
Red Bull is going to be soggy by the end of
Right.
this. Like,
I
can
just
we
want to
up and
eat.
up? And like, I think they said verbatim, they went through the whole thing and they said, I pray your legs heal. And then he stopped me at the end and said, so do you feel any different? And I looked up and I was like, well, I feel like my Red Bull's cold.
That happened to me too, but it was in a very cold parking lot.
Oh
And
no, that's even worse.
and
Not
they
that the
wanted to
bread bowl is
pray, and
hard.
yeah, they wanted to pray, and I was like, okay, like can we go inside? I don't mind you
We move our
praying, but
bread elsewhere.
yeah, like I want to go inside because it's cold out here. And but yeah, I like what you said, that they're the assumptions that people make, that you're not content or that you want to be fixed, in quotations.
Yeah.
And it hasn't always been I haven't always been okay with having a disability and missing out on some things. And but as I got older, it was like, okay, like I just have to do things differently. I can still do
Right.
a lot of everything else. And I've never really been interested in wanting to play football, um, or get hit by a
Right.
200,
But I mean,
300
same
pound person.
thing.
But
I think as we grow, we find our comfort and our strengths and our abilities. And I mean, I personally, I love my disability, and I don't feel the need to change it because I don't think about it. I mean, I'm
right,
living a perfectly able life in my world, because I've learned how to adapt, and I don't even feel like it's adapting. It's just what I do to live. And And I used to live in my first year in college. I was in a dorm, and there's 3 elevators, and every single one of them broke one day. And so me and 2 of my other friends who are also wheelchair users were, I think, sitting in the lobby playing bingo, to be honest with you. And a gentleman came up and said, "Can I pray for you guys?" And we were like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And he said, "So what do you need to pray about? What do you need?" And I kind of appreciate that approach. I was like, all right, so
Hmm.
this man's thinking broader. He's not saying I pray to fix you, but what do you need? And so they said, I remember something said, I've got an exam. Someone else said, we've got racing. And I said, I just really pray that the elevators work again. And so
Yes.
he starts the prayer, but he forgot what my request was. And so all that came out was, and I pray she learns how to use the elevator. I'm
Oh,
sitting there thinking, honey, I've had that one covered.
oh wow.
So
Oh
sometimes
my
your prayer
gosh.
requests get lost on us.
Yes. Yes. And it kind of it really follows into this next one of be positive. I know you'll walk again. Um,
Yup.
yeah, yeah, they kind of go hand in hand because usually, uh, as you were kind of explaining, it's like that's usually what the prayer involves of, us walking again, or and for me, like I've mentioned, I do walk, so I don't really want to freak these people out too much by like getting up and using my crutches to walk.
Oh man, you
I
have a
have
miracle opportunity. You can
I
be like,
have
you did it.
I have thought about it, but usually when I'm out and doing presentations, I do use my chair because it's more comfortable to sit than stand for an hour or two. But I always make sure I tell people, um, you'll see me here. I'm using my chair today, especially when I talk to kids in the local school districts. I'm like, you see me here today. I'm using my chair, but you might see me, this weekend walking at the movie theater. Like, don't think anything has changed.
Right. I'm
I
still me.
right. You might
Still
see
doing
me
this my
walking into a
way.
restaurant, but I just switch it up every now and again, and and that has happened where people have seen me walking, and they're like, "Wait a minute." I said, "Well, you never asked if I could walk." You
Right.
know?
you you never ask if this conversation was necessary.
Right. You never asked if I could walk. I didn't mention it, but you never asked. So,
I always hear also everyone has a solution or a news article they read, where it's the latest and greatest cure, and a man with paraplegia has been cured, and they can do it for you too. And it's like, well, that sounds like something my insurance wouldn't cover.
right.
And also, I don't want to do that. So we're cool.
right.
But they assume that they need to impart this attitude of optimism on you. They assume that there needs to be this conversation of, okay, well, I'm sure this person's sad. I'm sure this person is down in the dumps, and they need to know that there's a solution out there for them. But it's such a bigger picture of, no, I'm sad because the elevator's not freaking working, and I have popcorn up there. Like,
Right. right. Now I want to get to my room and
they
lay down.
right, exactly. It is nap time. And so I think, I mean, obviously that factors into so many of these, is that people think our lives are less fulfilling and less fantastic and capable and full than they are.
yes. And the last one, and we're just on this top row here,
Yeah,
and we've
I've
so
got
far,
bingo already.
yes. What happened to you? Yes, this is a question I get often, all the time. And it's actually a question I don't mind, um, because I think for me, that's one of the main reasons why I created OurView, was to educate people. And I think
Mhm.
that question really, a lot of times, comes from a genuine um, interest in learning more and wanting to know, why do you use the crutches, or why are you in the wheelchair, or, uh,
Exactly. And I
so
think
I
that's the
don't mind it.
distinction. I think
Hmm.
I think I agree with you there. And I think that's kind of the distinction of someone, I think I get mad. I mean, we talked about entitlement of information earlier, and people coming in and saying, what's wrong with you? And I think that's what I get mad about, is when they use the word wrong, or implying that there's
Right.
something that needs to be fixed versus, what's your story? What did happen to you? And so I don't want to make sure I didn't confuse the two, but I do think that's okay. Because I agree with
Yes.
you that I think it does come a genuine place of people want to know more. They want to know, they see something that's different. They see us obviously functioning, so they kind of want to know how we got here. And I think
Yes.
as people with disabilities, that's a really big part of our role, is if we want to be integrated, we want to be part of an able-bodied society where people aren't batting an eyelash at somebody who moves differently. I think there's a very long conversation that has to happen leading up to it, where we talk about what happened to us. We talk about kind of the nuances. We put an understanding at how ridiculous some of those questions and stuff are, to kind of get people to see us differently, and have that educational piece.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to it's not what you say, it's how you say it
Mm-hmm. Yep.
part, because and I didn't even think about it until you just said it. When people say, "What's wrong with you?" It's like, I know what they
Right.
mean. I
Right.
know
That
what
you
they
want,
mean,
they
but then it's just like, I know exactly what they mean, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with me.
exactly. And so I feel like when they ask that question, it comes from a different place. It comes from a place of, well, you need to be fixed, you're broken. But what
Mhm.
happened to you, I think, is that just genuine curiosity of, you are different, you move differently, why?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
in that, I'm always willing to have that conversation.
Yeah. A story I can relate to this experience. I was out for my birthday a few years ago. It's a story I shared on my blog too, where a little girl was out with her family and she was at the table next to us. And she just kept looking at me, and she was looking. And every time I would turn in that direction, she would just be looking at me. And she was maybe 7 or 8. And, her parents, noticed, of course, and they, well, don't say, don't stare,
Don't stare,
yeah, don't
right?
stare. And then finally, her dad said, well, I heard him say it looks like somebody's celebrating a birthday. So go say happy birthday. I think it's his birthday.
I
So
love that.
so she came over to me and started talking to me. And like I said, she was maybe 6 or 7. And she said, "I'm sorry you're sick." And I said, "Oh no." And I'm like, "Oh no." Like, I've never thought of myself as being sick, but to a child, yes, they see the
They
wheelchair and
see
it's like,
wheelchair, they think sick.
right. So we had that whole conversation about, I'm not sick. Like, I don't need to be in a hospital. It's just something I live with. And I told her all about my braces and spina bifida and everything. And I talked to her for maybe a good 5 minutes or so. And at the end of the night, we went to go pay our bill, and her father left $100 towards our bill. So,
That is so sweet.
and he said, and he told the waitress, tell him thanks for taking the time to talk to my daughter about the
That's
situation. And
incredible.
it
But I
was,
think we need to highlight what the parent did there. I mean, I
yes,
think that's something, gosh, I wish every single parent would do.
yeah,
And I think we can start jumbling some of these together. But I had a little girl, I was at the DMV, and she was staring me down. She had questions, and you could see it. And her mom jerked her up Kmart style, like yoinked this kid out of thin air, and I was like, "Don't stare, don't ask questions, yada 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 yada." And I was so shocked that I kind of sat there for a second. And I was like, "Wait, no." And so I
yeah.
chased this family out of the DMV. I lost my spot in line for this. Um, went flying after them, and I said, "No, like I would rather her ask, because a child is so genuinely curious, and they're sponges. If this is how they're shaping the world." And so kind of educated the parent too, of like, tell her to come say hey, like come talk to me, like let's learn about each other. And so the questions were at first always the usual of like, what happened to you, why are you in that, what is that, and then it was, do you know they're making a Frozen 2?
Right.
And so this whole dialogue shifts to where we see each other as people and not as our mobility aids. And I think parents, when they celebrate that, are in just such a unique position to do just that, to tell a child to go say hello, to go
Yeah, I
talk to us,
agree.
shy away.
Yeah, I
So I
definitely
love
agree.
that the dad did that.
Yeah, and that happened to me too at a grocery store. I was in the checkout line and people in front of me had a young son, and the mom, without missing a beat, she's scanning, bagging her items after they're scanned. And she said, "Johnny, if you're going to stare at the man, at least talk to him." And it kind of scared me the way she said it. I was like, wow, like I didn't even notice that he
Am
was
I in
staring.
trouble? Like,
Yeah,
dang.
he was young. He was maybe 4. Well, Johnny started talking, and like you said, he started talking about, cartoons and movies and things. And, by the time she got finished bagging her items, she says, "Okay, well, now you have to stop talking because we have to go." But he was, and that's all,
Yeah,
but that's all he needed. He just needed
right.
some encouragement from his mom to say, like, okay, you're okay to talk to. And,
Right, and that this isn't a super different person, and that I'm gonna let that kind of segue into this one. That is it permanent? Yes.
yes, yes, it is permanent.
And yes, I'm sticking with it, and I'm using that as a segue because my nephew, he's 12 years old now, and so I mean, it was kind of interesting me growing up with him at the age I am. I'm
Mhm,
27 years old, and so I was when he was born, I was figuring out my own identity as a wheelchair user. I
mhm,
was a teenager. I was figuring out where I fit, kind of in the scheme of things. I was developing this confidence. And I was watching this kid grow up and learn about me while I was learning about me, essentially.
yeah,
And I remember some of his most infamous quotes of just figuring it out is because, I mean, he asked, but he became such a defender of disability. So I
mhm,
remember the first time he ever asked, he said, "So are you always in a wheelchair?" And I said, "Yep, all the time. This is what I used to move around." And I remember he got really, really quiet and he looked around and he looked back at me and goes, "So even at night?"
uh-huh,
And like that was his word of like, okay, does it change like once it gets dark?
right.
Um, and so whenever he had questions, we just got to have this really open dialogue about it. But I remember we were at dinner at some birthday party, and there were 2 kids. He had to be maybe 6 or 7 years old,
Mhm,
and these 2 kids were talking about sports. And Bryson said, "Well, did you know that Jill tried out to be on the Paralympic team?" And the little girl looked back at him and said, "Well, that doesn't count. It's not the real Olympics. It's the
oh,
disabled people Olympics." And so I'm watching this transpire, and my nephew, first of all, I thought he was going to start swinging, but second, he looks and he goes, "It's more than you've ever done." And meanwhile, I'm over
ah,
here like,
oh,
and so it was always interesting to see that once you start those conversations so early, that you do explain that this is my setup, that this is my story. You get very fierce defenders out of it. If they hold on to what you can do, and they're really
yes,
ready to advocate. They're gonna
yes,
go on the line for you.
yeah, definitely. And speaking of segueing, I would like to segue 2 down from that. You're an inspiration. I get that all the time. I just posted a video 2 days ago or so, and a few people on my Facebook page, "Oh, you're such an inspiration." I don't mind that at all. Um,
Really?
I don't. Just because I think for me, more people are. I think more people are shocked that I find them to be an inspiration to me, because it's, everybody has a story, everybody has challenges and struggles, and you know what I live with every day. It doesn't make me any more special or different than what other people face every day. I know single moms who are raising 2 kids and
Yeah.
working and all of that. And it's like, that's an inspiration to me, because like you're
Right.
kicking ass at
That's
life.
hard.
Right. That's
You're
hard.
doing a lot of things.
I can't take care of myself, and you're taking care of yourself, and two little people who depend on you for everything, and you're working a job too. I, you know,
Yeah.
I do. I often tell my friends, you inspire me. Like I am inspired to keep going because, like I said, we all live life with challenges and obstacles that happen in our life, and it doesn't make me. I'm glad people can look at me and see that, that I encourage them or inspire them to do whatever it is in life that they need to face.
I think I agree with you there. I think the eye roll came from, I always get that quote when I'm doing the dumbest stuff. Like, I'm buying a can of soup, and a woman's like, "You're so inspiring." And I'm like, "You're a Progresso fan, I see." Like,
I have to eat.
so I think right, like, I think the eye roll, because I developed a similar belief when I was growing up of like, people would tell me you're such an inspiration. And I didn't feel like I was doing anything particularly inspiring, but I feel that, I mean, obviously, who are we to take away from something that gives someone else hope, or
Right.
someone else the drive to do better, to be better? I think that's always inherent to the person. But
Hmm.
if you tell me and I'm an inspiration while I'm trying to buy toilet paper, then like I'm gonna give you some side eyes because that's weird.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of it is so much of context of I'm out and about, I'm living my perfectly able life of where I am in a wheelchair and it just is. And so I
Hmm.
think when I get the "you're an inspiration" quote, it's a smile and a thank you, and I'm glad it does something for them. But I think that one I've had a roller coaster with. And
Yeah.
so I think that's why it elicited such a reaction, because at first I was so at peace with it. I was like, sure, I'm glad I'm providing an inspiration for people. But then I think when I started to get a little bit edgy about my disability and edgy about what people are expected to know,
Right.
like, I think there's a massive conversation in the world about what we as people with disabilities expect able people to know, to say, to have a response to, when why should they? I mean, historically speaking, we were a group that was kind of cloistered. We were a group that you didn't see integrated in society, that were portrayed as fragile in the media.
Hmm.
And so it's when we're out and about buying toilet paper, it's different because we're
Right.
functioning.
Yeah.
And so historically speaking, I think like I do my absolute best. I cannot say I'm perfect at this, but I do my absolute best to not fault somebody um, for not getting it right on the first try.
Yeah.
And there are things obviously that frustrate the hell out of me, like the "what's wrong with you," the "can you have sex,"
Hmm.
and things that I think are crossing the line boundaries of human decency. Um,
Yes.
but it took me a while to get to that point, to remember to kind of hold that able bodies, people with different abilities than my own, there is absolutely, we're the ones who we're training them, right? I mean, we're the ones who are
Yeah.
teaching of what this looks like to be an able person,
Right.
in a different way. So
Yeah. They
that's my
have
thought
to.
on that.
Yeah. And I like that. It's really, I think, and what you touched on a little bit was the like I think the labels of it all of um disabled and able-bodied and just the back to what you said originally of people feeling like something's wrong with us because we use wheelchairs or we have to move about differently. But yeah, doing everyday life things like you said, buying toilet paper or going to the grocery store, it's like, well, I have to eat, and
Right, right.
after I eat,
Being
things happen
disabled
like
doesn't buy
everybody
my
else. So
groceries.
right.
Exactly. Like, being disabled is not going to bring me my can of soup. So
Right. Yeah, so it's all and like I said, I like to flip it on people too and let them know, like, I look at them, I see what they're doing too, and I pay attention, and what they
I
do
love that.
inspires me. Yeah,
I love
so
that you
it's
do that in the positive way. To flip it on and kind of talk about, well, what's your story? Like, what are you doing
right.
that's good and propelling? Because I mean, we get energy from that too. I'm gonna cross one off because we covered it. Have you heard about stem cell research?
Oh, yes. Yes. You did mention that.
Oh, my lines are going crazy here. And I think that kind of segs into, uh, you seem very happy. Yeah,
Yes.
I freaking am.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I am most of the time.
yeah, like I'm a pretty upbeat person, and so or like, you seem like you've got a great attitude on life, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm buying my toilet paper. I'm pretty jazzed. There's a sale.
Right.
Um, so I think that all factors into there's so much of that stigma of, well, something's wrong with you, therefore you must be less fulfilled, or you're out and about, you're doing things, you seem happy about it, that's great for you. And so yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you seem happy, and but it's, and I often tell people, I am most of the time pretty happy, but my parents were very understanding of, my disability, of course, and realizing that not every day was a good day. Um,
Hmm.
but they also had stuff to do, and I had to go with them. So, my parents would give me a day. Okay, you can chill out today, but
Yep.
tomorrow we
And
have to get
then
back up to it. So that's
exactly. And I
something.
think that's part of it too, that conversation is you get to share that story of, well, I wasn't always here. Like there were a lot of things in life that set me up that I struggled with, that this was,
Mhm.
I didn't pop out into the world in a wheelchair and think, boy, this is awesome.
Right.
That there was a journey with it. And I think that lends itself to broader conversations with people of like, yeah, I am pretty happy. I really love where I'm at now, but people are always going to be at different phases of that journey. And there are going to be good days and there are going to be days where you're frustrated as hell at it. And I think realizing that story, it gave me a lot of solace and like, okay, yeah, this was kind of rough at first and that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I like what you said there of like, it didn't always start out that way and there were good days and bad days,
Right. And there still are good days and bad days. For
but
me
that's
being in,
anybody, that's being
yeah. And
human.
that, yes, and that's what I was saying. What it goes back to the urine inspiration. It's, it's like, yeah, we all have good days and bad days, and we all go through stuff, but it's like we all, push through it, and we find different ways to, get through things, and it's, my way is not better or worse than yours, and it's we're all, uh, in this, like, this whole quarantine situation. It's I've been out the house 5 times since March 11th, and it's May, what is today? May 22nd?
Time is irrelevant
Time,
is
yes,
what it
time
is.
doesn't exist anymore.
It's not a thing.
But I'm not moving as much as I used to. So it's like, the stiffness and everything comes in,
Hmm.
so it's like, yeah, you seem very happy, but a lot of times I'm struggling to get through some stiffness and some pain, but
Yeah,
it's
you know what I did? I don't know. I gotta find it. This is actually my quarantine activity. Is I joined TikTok and I became semi-viral on TikTok because I announced myself as a wheelchair user that was transitioning to one of those butt scooters you'd ride around in elementary school.
oh
And so
yes.
that is kind of I started to get the same thing, the stiffness, that I didn't feel like I was moving. I mean, I was going around in circles the same way, and so it's just like, screw it, this is a new fun way to do that. So I bought a giant butt scooter to just
Yes.
scoot around. It's been awesome.
Is it orange?
Look at that bad boy.
Oh, it's blue. Yes, your butt scooter is
It's
blue. Yes.
so serious too. So I can
Yes.
honestly say no one has ever told me I'd rather be dead than be in a wheelchair.
No, that has never happened to me. Um, However, the next one, can I sit in your lap, happens all the time.
It's so
And
weird too. And
and
like,
unless if I know you, please don't ever ask me that.
right,
And
like you don't need to sit down here.
right,
Like
I'm not a
it's
seat.
occupied.
Right, right. I'm not a seat, and the seat I'm sitting in is already occupied. So please,
And
not enough room
sometimes,
for
I
two.
mean, I know it, like, again, like if I know the person, or if we're joking around with my friends and stuff like that, it's a fun, it's funny, and it's our kind of world. But
Right.
strangers have sat in my lap, and that's
Oh,
weird.
yeah, yeah. That has happened to me once or twice. Yeah, or
Yeah, they just pop a
or
squat
20
and
or
I
20
go.
times.
Right, exactly. And like you never quite know what to say. You never know, like, do you push them? Do you say like,
Right,
excuse me, will you please get out of my lap? Like that part
right,
seems self-explanatory before they got in my lap.
right. Oh gosh, yeah.
Okay, so for the next one there, the you're too pretty to be in a wheelchair. I've got that one in just such a catastrophic way. So my best friend and I in college, we were pushing down the street together. We were going to some bar, some party or whatever, meeting up with some friends. And a guy stopped us and said, so what class are you in? And we're sitting there looking at each other like, what? Because the first thing that came to my mind was that, I mean, in wheelchair athletics, you are divided by classification of, okay, like this is your abilities. So I am a T53 in track, and that's what it was
Okay.
called. And so if you have a little more movement, you're a T54. If you're quadriplegic, T52, and so on. And this goes on for everything. So he asks this, and the first thing out of my mouth was T53. Like, such a strange question to get on the street. He's like, kind of looks at me like, obviously that didn't make sense to me. He goes, no. I mean, what class are you in school? And I was like, lots of them. This is college. We take many of those. I don't know how you're getting away with one. And he said, well, no, you got to be doing this for a project. And she are looking at each other like, what are you talking about? Like, what project? And he goes, yeah, what class are you in that they have you using wheelchairs all the time? And we kind of just look at him like dumbfounded.
Oh, no.
And he looks at us and goes, yeah, because you're too pretty. Like, you wouldn't be actually in a wheelchair. And both of us just kind of stopped and we're like, plot twist, we are. And he walked away. He had no idea what to say to that.
Wow.
And so we were just sitting there like, that actually happened.
Wow, I'm kind of dumbfounded right now.
Right. Like, what do you say? Like, no, I'm committed.
Right. Nope, it's me. Here I am. Oh my goodness.
It's flattering. Thanks, I guess. No?
Yeah. Thanks, I think.
It was so weird.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've never gotten you're too handsome to be in a wheelchair.
You're too handsome to be in a wheelchair.
Oh, thank you, Jill.
Now you have. Now you can cross that out on your bingo card.
Yes. I would like to. Huh?
Oh, no, I was gonna go ahead and call the well, we can discuss the free space in the end, because I think that one should obviously be you're gonna get a speeding ticket in that thing.
Oh yes, let's do that.
I think that's a gimme.
Yes. Slow down, or yes, you're going to get a speeding ticket in that thing for sure.
So, story on that one. Everyone says that if you're going too fast, or don't drink and drive, or you're gonna get a speeding ticket, or if you're with somebody in a wheelchair, God forbid, you want to race.
Oh yes.
Chandler's listening to this and he heard that too.
Yes, the free space can be anything in that range
anything
of things.
In the realm of wheel humor.
Yes.
But I was with a friend of mine at a park and rec show, and she's also in a chair, and we were pushing around, and we said, okay, happy hour today. We've got to take a drink for every time somebody says, are you two in a race? We would have died.
Oh, I was going to say, wow, that's amazing.
We would have straight up died. And so we couldn't do it. And so she and I started having the conversation of like, what if you flipped that? What if you started asking just able-bodied people on the street, so you two in a race, or don't get a speeding ticket, don't drink and drive? And they're looking at you thinking like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So I want to that's my goal in life. She and I want to do a reality show where we just go up to people and say the same crap we hear, just to show how weird and out of left field it is.
Oh, that is such an amazing idea.
I think that'd be so
like you said, just walk up to two random people. Say you want to race or slow down.
Who's gonna win? Right.
Slow down on those legs.
Settle.
I think the one next to the free space grabs wheelchair and pushes without asking is
don't get me started.
That has happened many times. I think one of the most odd places is at the grocery store, where I was.
Really?
I was there and I was looking for something, and I had my chair on an angle, looking at something, and someone came behind me and grabbed my chair. Has a bar across the back, and they lifted my chair to straighten me out so they could get by.
What
So,
did you do? I would
I
have
was
had a
just,
lot of problems.
yeah, I was just kind of like, no, no, what are you doing? What, don't touch me. What are you, stop.
Why are you doing that?
Right. Stop. And it was like, well, I was just trying to get by. I said, well, you can
You
use your
could
words.
ask.
I said, you can use your words and I can use mine and say, oh, sorry, I didn't know I was in your way, and I can move myself.
Like,
Please don't
it's not
ever
your
touch.
job.
Right. Please don't ever touch someone's chair like that. Like, it's,
Yep. I think that's one we need to, like, I'm not even gonna X that one out. We're gonna circle that and like
yes. Star
really
it and
zone in
everything
there.
else.
Like,
Yeah,
draw little
that,
arrows to that one.
yeah, I think that's a really big thing. And for that person specifically, I think the big thing, it segues into another issue of having one disability. People assume that you have others. So I'm in a wheelchair, or I'm using my crutches, but I also, maybe can't hear or also can't speak or something like that. So,
Yep.
that, I think that's a whole different conversation, but I think they
Yes,
are oftentimes related. Um,
they
yeah.
are, and it can be in such an, I almost want, I hate to use the word degrading. As somebody
Mhm.
who strongly advocates for being positive towards educating people without disability, but I mean, my horror story there of the grabs wheelchair, which is that asking. So I firmly believe that everything that you ever need while traveling can fit in one backpack. And so my backpack is frequently 10 million pounds. So I'm not
Mhm.
moving anywhere fast when I have my backpack, but I'm efficient. And so I was getting off of a plane with my 10 million pound backpack, and I was trying to go up the jet bridge, which is sloped. So it's an upward slope, and I'm pushing, I'm taking my time because my backpack's 10 million pounds. And the stewardess came up behind me, grabbed my waist, not anywhere else, not my chair, my waist,
Oh.
and pushed me up the jet bridge, screaming, choo choo, like we were having the funnest little jolly
Oh
time.
no, lady.
And it was an early flight. I was like, lady, I slept through the beverage service. You didn't even buy me a drink first. Like, this is awkward. And so we come busting into the terminal when I can barely hold on because when someone pushes your wheelchair, you lose your balance. You
Yeah.
lose the physicality of where you're at in space. And so
Mhm.
I'm like trying to stay in this bad boy. She's screaming choo choo. We're flying into the scene. And so many things wrong with that, of grabbing my wheelchair, assuming I need help, not asking. But like you said, the assuming there are other disabilities there, of thinking maybe my mental capacity wasn't there to ask, or she assumed that she needed to dumb it down and make train noises. I was like, lady, this isn't even a freaking train. We got off an airplane. Like, make like
Right.
airplane noises at least. What is this, amateur hour?
Right. And I'm an adult.
Right. And we don't do that. And
Right.
so, like you said, people can use their words. And I think that kind of lends itself to this one, the do you need help? And I'm going to square it because I think that's a
Yes.
great one.
Yes.
I think we should highlight that as a good thing, because whenever I get asked that question, I get this little happy dance inside, because it means someone's not assuming my ability better than I know it. They're
Yes.
saying,
I
okay, well,
agree.
like, maybe they're carrying a lot of things and need help with the door, or maybe they need an assist. And I think that's perfectly okay to ask.
Right.
Do you want
I
some help here? And if I say no, you better not touch me after that. But
Right. Yes, accept my
asking is
answer.
fair.
Yes, accept my answer of no, though. The one where I try not to say no is if a child asks.
Yes,
It
I
happens a lot. It
love
happens a
that
lot to me in a
policy.
grocery store. Or they'll see me, putting my bags in the car or taking my chair apart. My chair comes apart, the wheels pop off, and all of that. Um, and a child might be going to their car with their parents and saying like, "Oh, do you think that man needs help?" And the parents sometimes they'll kind of like look at me, or they'll say, well, you can ask him. And I'll have them like hold the wheel of my wheelchair while I put the frame in the car or something like that, just so they
Yeah,
feel like they've done something or
but
helped.
they're
And
educated. Because they're
Right.
also learning that you can get in your car. I mean, you
Right.
have adults who ask like, well, how do you drive? Which is a
Right.
great conversation to have. But I mean, as a child, if you just learn that, that's going to stick with them. They're going to know that we can do that. That's something we can do. So
Yeah.
I
And I've
love that
had,
policy, and I'm going to steal it.
yeah, and I've had, back to the grocery store situation. I usually, when I shop, I use the basket and sit it on my lap and wheel around the store. And I've had, older child, maybe, 10, 11 years old or so, come over to me with their parent nearby and say, if you need help, my mom said that I can help you. I can carry
I'm
your
like, heck
basket for
yeah,
you.
kid. Like,
So I'm like,
jump
sure,
in.
thanks. Like, this is getting heavy anyway. So, even though it's not, I'm just like, yes, like, please, I need to get like two more things.
And
And
it's so cool how they learn.
yes,
I am kind of taking it back to the playground world. We have a big group spinner, the Omni Spin, and
yes,
it's shaped kind of like a bowl where everybody can hop in this thing. And I was gonna jump in the spinner, and at a playground one day, it was packed with kids, and this little girl stops me and says, "No, you can't do this. You're in a wheelchair." And I said, no, like I can get out of my wheelchair. I can come play. I can come sit in this thing and join the party. And she just looked like I rocked her world. Like she doesn't say a word. She scoots in and asks if she can sit by me. And I say, sure. And so we're having a ball. I mean, I have these kids spinning this thing all over the place. I lost a shoe in the process. Like it was a time and a half. And then I went to get out and leave and, do work stuff. And it was so cool because all the kids are saying, well, like, how can we help you? And so they're all jumping out. One kid's grabbing my wheelchair. Another kid's saying, well, where do we need to put this? Another kid's going to grab my shoe and says, do you want help putting this back on or do you got this one?
right.
But they're all asking, they're learning, they're having that dialogue of, okay, well, she can transfer, she can move. What can we do to help her? And so I thought it was so cool that they're asking, well, where do you need your wheelchair?
Yeah.
Because every single and kind of ending that story, but the little girl looked back up at me and said, man, I wish I was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
um but the power in them asking where I needed that, it was not lost upon me, because I mean, this is without a doubt, every single time I get off of a plane, I ask them to bring my wheelchair to first class. I get to the first seat and I wait for them to bring me my wheelchair, and without fail, 100% of the time they bring it to me backwards. They
Hmm.
wheel it in to where the back bar is facing me, and I'm looking at them like, how do you think this pans out? Like, do I
Yeah.
vault over this or like tip it back and like slide in there? But it strikes me that no one ever asks, like, which way do you want this? And the
Right.
kids managed to do so. So I mean, um, I think that's a very cool one of just promoting kids asking, and I love that policy of always make sure they help.
Yes. Oh gosh, this has been so much fun.
I know, I love
and,
this.
and great hearing our different but very similar experiences
The
of
war stories, yeah.
yes, war stories, yes. But for the rest of these, I think I mean it's safe to say all of them except for the one that you mentioned before, I'd rather be dead than be in a wheelchair. I think all of these have um applied to
Occurred
me,
some kind of
occurred.
conversation. The
Yes.
do you know is a personal favorite. Do you know so and
Yes.
so? They're also in a wheelchair. Like
Yes, because
our
we
network
know
is that
everybody.
small, right?
Yeah,
And then the
we
worst part is when you actually do, and you're like, ah, crap, here I go, feeding into that stereotype.
yeah, it's I get that often. And then when I my favorite is when I say no, I don't know, and they're like, yeah, you do.
You do, you gotta. They're in a wheelchair too, and you're like,
Right,
are
of
they
course
now?
you do. Like, no, I
Oh,
don't. I not sure.
oh
But yeah,
gosh,
all the
yes, I
rest of
love this.
these, I think my one of my other favorites is down at the bottom. I bet you get great parking. Um,
You damn right I do.
I do, and it's so funny. I am oftentimes I'm the person who drives to events because of that great parking, um, among my friends and family. So they know I get great parking, and it's like, oh yeah, we're all going to this concert together. We're all going to this event together. Arthur, are you driving? Like, sure, I'll drive.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jill, thank you so much for joining us today. And, have a great day. And of course, I will be talking to you soon. And keep up the good work. And I appreciate
You
you.
too.
And thank you for joining me on this episode of the OurView Podcast. And I will be in touch.
Thanks for having me. Have me back. I have lots of other stories and opinions to share.
Yes, I definitely
But
will.
I love what you're doing, and this is so fun. So I'm excited to see what you come up with.
Oh, thank you so much. And like I said, have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.
Bye, friend.
Bye, friend. Thank you for listening to this episode of the OurView Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the OurView Podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. New episodes will be released on the 15th and 30th of every month. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at OurView for Life. That's OurView, the number 4, LIFE. Do you want to help change the tone of conversation among your family and friends? Head over to our website for some OurView merchandise. Our website is www.our-view.com/merchandise. I thank you for listening. Have a great day and take care.